2016 saw the world divided on a number of issues, including economic interdependence, nationalism, and national security from fringe actors around the world. International organizations have seen their legitimacy questioned. Western liberal institutions have begun to lose their unipolar grip upon global morality, and countries in the global north have seen a weakening middle class as emerging countries seek economic independence in a post-colonial world. The world is changing, and political divisiveness has made the perpetuation of individual relationships difficult within individual cultures. But amongst all these controversial issues, one question contributes more to a social divide than any other. Is Sonic Forces a good game? Oh boy, Sonic Forces is finally out. I don't think any Sonic game has been this divisive within the fan base ever. On one side, you have fans who were cautiously optimistic, and on the other, you have fans who couldn't believe people weren't blindly loving Forces. And then you had outside trolls fueling the fire. Sonic Forces is a weird case. There really hasn't been a truly bad core Sonic game in years, and it's coming out directly after one of the most celebrated games in the series. But so much about it just kind of screams, oh? For one, it's the first Sonic game to try to have a serious plot since Sonic Unleashed. It allows for players to create their own custom characters and has a hodgepodge of different playstyles. It seems like such a mixed bag that many Sonic fans don't know what to think of it. When Sonic Forces first was announced, I was more hyped than I was about Sonic Mania. But as more trailers began to come out and more things were announced, I slowly grew more cautious. I made a video about my caution. People weren't happy. I mean, that's what I get for using a clickbait title, but wow, that's what I get for using a clickbait title. You know, sometimes you just gotta play the game that is YouTube. I played through Sonic Forces' main story the day it came out, and to be honest, it was okay. I'm going to avoid major plot spoilers right now, but I'll give a warning before I talk about the story. But for now, minor gameplay spoilers. Sonic Forces features 3 gameplay styles: Modern Sonic, Classic Sonic, and Billiam, your own original character. Let's start with something positive. I never played the demo, nor did I play the game before the official release date, so my first interaction with it was after downloading the Day 1 patch, and I don't think Boost Sonic has ever controlled better. One of my complaints with the Boost games has been that Sonic feels slippery. When Sonic is walking, he's hard to control, and the drift is necessary because you can't turn a corner without slamming into a wall. But in Sonic Forces, Modern Sonic's controls are much tighter. The drift has been done away with because Sonic can now turn a fucking corner. The good points with Modern Sonic are really good, and I hope DLC gets put out for the game because I'd love to have more time with Modern Sonic. You're still using the boost a lot, but it's a bit more sparse here. Rings don't replenish your boost gauge, so it isn't something that's regularly available. If more Boost Sonic games come out, I want to see more of this. The boost should be a special move, not a core mechanic that is consistently available and ready to use. Next, the custom character. So the custom character pretty much controls the same way as Sonic, but instead of a boost, they have a weapon called a Wisp-On. I know a lot of people were annoyed that the Wisps would be included in this game, but only the custom character uses Wisp-related power-ups. Wisps are essentially these little aliens that Sonic can absorb to gain superpowers and abilities. The kind of Wisps you can use are entirely dependent on the Wisp-On you have equipped to your character. To be honest, I wasn't really excited to have the custom character, but the fact that I can make him so derpy was a treasure. Watching him interact with much better designed characters and cutscenes is hilarious. I mean, he's just a dog, he's a good boy, but he has all these big, soulless eyes that always make him look like he's really worried about something, like he left the stove on, or just totally inept to the situation going on around him. The custom character's gameplay is not quite as fun as Modern Sonic. I was never annoyed that I had to stop playing as Modern Sonic to start playing with the custom character, but I was annoyed by the inclusion of Classic Sonic. Alright, I think everyone's big fucking shock from Sonic Forces was the fact that Classic Sonic controls worse than both Modern and the custom character. What? So coming off of Sonic Mania, it's hard not to have high standards for how Classic Sonic should control. I mean, Sonic Mania did it even better than the Classic, but Sonic Forces has no regard for accuracy. Or maybe it was just really hard to mimic the Classic physics, but anyways, it's just a mess here. Sonic doesn't naturally gain momentum, he just goes. and slows down when he does anything. There is no fluidity here. He jumps, he suddenly slows down. He goes through a loop, he suddenly slows down. He rolls into a ball, he suddenly slows down. Classic Sonic is by far the worst part about this game. I said in my Forces pre-release video that I was interested to see how Classic Sonic was going to be shoehorned into the game, and the answer is that the shoe was 2 sizes too small and Sonic's heels were sliced off to fit into it. It's a shame, because Classic Sonic was thrown into the game to appeal to classic fans, but like, it just boiled down to a marketing tactic and nothing more. I would argue that not only does Classic Sonic not contribute to the game, but it actually took away from my enjoyment of it. So many of the problems with the levels in the game are true for all 3 playstyles. It always felt like it was building up to something that never quite paid off. In the main story, there are 30 levels, including boss battles to complete, and none of them really stuck out to me in any particular way. I remember the themes of the levels, but nothing about the levels themselves. All of them are really short, and often there would be times where I'd feel like the game was building up to some sort of climax right before the end of the level, and then it would just be over. Like in Classic Sonic's Death Egg stage, there's a point where Knuckles says the Death Egg's weapons have been disabled.
Right. The Death Egg is starting to crumble.
And I'm thinking that there's gonna be this big ending part, escaping the Death Egg, but it just ends abruptly. The whole game is like edging you with the promise of something more, but it just never comes. Sonic games always have standout moments to me, but I can't really think of one in this game that would qualify as a game-defining moment. But there's a lot of fake excitement in Sonic Forces. In the spaceport level, which by the way is Chemical Plant Zone, there's a cutscene in-game that could have easily utilized some like QuickTime events like in other parts of the game, but it just sort of goes on. There's also this moment where a giant snake eats Sonic that's just sort of weird and out of place. In Forces, there's just so much on screen, but so little activity from the player. There were times where I would die a few times only to realize that the only thing I had to do was let the game guide me to survive. Interacting with the game, playing the game, would get me killed, specifically during the water slide portions. I talked about how Sonic's boost is slightly less accessible than before, but levels are so short that the boost gauge being limited to just the wisps doesn't really make much of a difference. It only has the potential to make a difference. Also, until the second half of the last boss of the game, everything is incredibly easy. I never died and felt a challenge coming on. I would die and know that I just made some dumb mistake. At some point, I've had to rage quit every Sonic game. The bad ones, the good ones, the okay ones, but not here. I wasn't challenged throughout the entire game. Then there's the boss battles. Early on in the game, you're promised this reunion of 4 old bosses coming together to fight Sonic. But, spoiler time, they're all fake. Infinite, the game's real villain, has the power to create replicas. You never fight Shadow, Zavok is beaten early on in the game, Metal Sonic's boss battle is neat but underwhelming, and Chaos is defeated in a cutscene by Classic Sonic. Actually, a lot of stuff happens in cutscenes that should be gameplay, and a lot of dialogue happens through the little walkie-talkie chat that should be cutscenes. The one thing I thought was cool about the boss battles was Infinite's attacks that would cause reality to change when it hits you. That's a really cool concept that's executed well in the game, but Infinite himself is really boring. So let's talk about that story. Sonic Forces sees Eggman finally taking over the world, and unfortunately there's only one SatAM reference in the whole game.
Do it to it, Shadow. Let's do it to it.
Sonic Forces is darker than Sonic games have been recently, and you can tell that by the fact that Eggman is using a different standard robot other than the Egg Pawns, which is a common trend. What I appreciate about it is the story isn't told with this hyper-inflated sense of importance that games like Sonic 06 and Shadow the Hedgehog did. This is a slightly darker story, but it still knows it's a Sonic story. I mean, there's this scene where Amy's like 80% of our forces were wiped out.
80% of our forces have been wiped out!
And she says it so nonchalantly. And then you look at this big crowd scene later on in the game and, you know, if 80% of her forces were wiped out, and that's 20% right there, thousands of people died, and Amy's just like, whoopsie poopsie. Also, Sonic was tortured, but he's totally fine when rescued. So it's like there's this dark stuff happening in the game, but just not this really dark and depressing tone. The story is just kind of lame. I'm not going to cover it point by point, but here are some of my key points. So in Sonic Mania, the whole driving force behind the plot was this thing called the Phantom Ruby. Classic Sonic is sent through a portal at the end of that game and brought into Sonic Forces story, where the Phantom Ruby was this thing made by Eggman and used by Infinite. There is no in-game clarification to what the Phantom Ruby actually is and where it came from, and that's fine. The way the Phantom Ruby's powers are explained in Sonic Forces doesn't make it clear for how Classic Sonic could actually be there. And also, they retconned Classic Sonic before he was actually Sonic from the past, but now he's Sonic from a different dimension. I mean, I'm just pointing this out. It's not necessarily a criticism. I don't care too much about continuity between the games themselves, but it's confusing. Though I do appreciate the foresight of trying to tie the game into Mania. It just doesn't make much sense. Also, if there's some shit in the new comics that explains this, whatever, it's not explained in game. Like the levels, the story seems like it's always building up to something that's never paid off. Infinite seemed to be this unstoppable force, but 2 lame boss fights later and he's just gone. I'm assuming maybe they'll do a Supersonic vs. Infinite DLC chapter later on. Also, his backstory in the episode Shadow DLC was built up to be this big reveal, but there was none. Infinite is a character who we've never seen before who was butthurt about losing to Shadow in a scuffle, so he became completely evil. That's not really character development, or at least it's really lame character development. Chaos, Shadow, and Silver all had an arc to follow, and whether or not that arc worked or didn't work, it still had a purpose. There is no purpose for Infinite other than to justify what's happening in the story. Also, I hate the custom characters arc in this game. So basically, the Sonic cast raises a resistance army against Eggman. I guess Gun is nowhere to be seen. Everyone calls your character Rookie, and by the end of the game, they're like, I guess you're not a rookie anymore. But this arc makes no sense because the first mission your character goes on is capturing Sonic from Eggman's high-security Doomsday spaceship. And even after all of that, they call you a rookie. It's like, really? I just got you the guy who can save the fucking world and you're still calling me a rookie? There's also this moment where Eggman sends Sonic and your own original character into this dark, escapeless void, and you think it's gonna be this big dramatic thing, but 30 seconds later, they're out of it. There's no tension. The story is fine. I mean, it's more engaging than some other stories in the series. They're going in the right direction, just maybe they have a little longer ways to go. I love to see a game's story outlined by this team, and then have the script fully fleshed out and written by the Sonic Boom team. I would love a darker Sonic story with a better, more self-aware sense of humor. It's hard to talk about Sonic Forces, because I feel like many Sonic games before it, that it just didn't live up to its potential. There's a lot of ideas in Sonic Forces that I like, which were better than I expected, like the custom characters. But for many of the ideas, there was just no commitment. The game is short, and I'm a proponent of a shorter Sonic game, but there's no standout moments. I don't want 30 okay short levels. I want 10 really fucking good levels. I don't want a forced integration of classic Sonic. I want Sega to run with the modern gameplay mechanics that they're on the cusp of perfecting and create levels to better suit those mechanics. Sonic Forces was okay. I wasn't actively excited, nor was I actively bored or frustrated. It was just sort of okay. I played it. It's done. That's sort of my whole reaction. It's a perfectly adequate game that I wish was something more. Let's hope next time Sega can figure out what that more is. But that's just my opinion. It's okay if you have a different opinion. People are always talking about how you can't satisfy the entire Sonic fan base, and that's okay. Sonic is 26 years old and is constantly reinventing itself. Every Sonic game is somebody's first Sonic game. Therefore, everybody has a different definition of what a great Sonic game should be. This video was just my opinion, and just remember, there's no such thing as an unbiased opinion. Everybody's review of this game is biased to their own personal preference. I don't value my opinion any more than yours just because I make a video about it. It's okay to love Sonic Forces, it's okay just to think it's okay, and it's okay just to hate on it entirely. Unless you're, trying to elicit a reaction out of somebody. Then you're just being an asshole. So anyways, if this is your first video of mine, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing and doing all that other junk on my social media down below. Also, I recently launched a Patreon, so if you want to support me on there, you can. You don't have to. It's entirely optional. Thank you for watching. Have a good day, and I'll see you next week.